Welcome to the Audacity to Podcast, episode 74. Is Zune still important for podcasters? Rob Greenlee has the answer. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Audacity to Podcast. I'm Daniel J. Lewis, and this is a how-to podcast about podcasting and using Audacity. This is where I give you the guts and teach you the tools to podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. And I'm so happy that you are joining me for this. The show notes for this episode will be at theaudacitytopodcast.com/74. And if you're not already subscribed to the Audacity to Podcast, I'd love it if you would subscribe for free over at theaudacitytopodcast.com. I even have over on the right side an email newsletter you can sign up for to get an occasional podcasting tip or a few tips or some tricks or get involved in answering some questions to help generate content for the podcast. And you can subscribe in iTunes, leave ratings and reviews and all of that very easily right from the website at theaudacitytopodcast.com. Now, I've talked about how to get in the top podcasting directories in episode 69 over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/69. And one listener, Nanny Jenny, called in a voicemail shortly after that and shared some conjecture or a report of something that challenges whether we really should be trying to get inside the Zune Marketplace. And basically, she was saying the Zune Marketplace is dead. So I want you to hear what Nanny Jenny had to say. Now, her voicemail that she sent in had a lot of noise in the background, so I had to clean this up a little bit, but I really wanted to let her use her voice to ask this question.
Hi, Daniel. This is Nanny Jenny from the NannyCast at nannycast.posterous.com. I was listening to episode 69 about top podcast directories and how to get in them, and I noticed that the very second directory you listed was the Zune Marketplace. And you were talking about how wonderful it would be in the Zune Marketplace because of the connection between the Zune Marketplace and Windows phones. So the very next day, I log into my feed reader, and what pops up but announcements from Microsoft saying that they are cutting the cord between Zune Marketplace and Windows phones. So, I wanted to submit this tip to keep you current, but Zune Marketplace might not be a place to focus energy any longer. Thank you for such an excellent podcast on the Audacity to Podcast, and I hope to hear more from you. This is Nanny Jenny at nannycast.posterous.com.
Thank you, Nanny Jenny, for sending in that voicemail, and I really appreciate that you brought that up. And there was an article, actually several articles that address this. I'm not sure exactly which one Nanny Jenny saw. By the way, you can check her out at NannyCast or NannyCast at posterous.com or Posterous. The article that I'm going to assume maybe she read, it's certainly one of the most popular ones, is from The Verge, which is a very popular tech blog, podcast, show, all of that. And they have an article, and I'll have a link to this in the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/74. This article was titled, How Microsoft is Killing Off the Zune and Windows Live Brands in Windows 8. The first line of this article says, Microsoft appears to be killing off two of its key user-facing brands with the upcoming consumer preview release of Windows 8. This article was published on February 24th, 2012. And I'll have a link to it in the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/24 or 74. I'm sorry. I've also seen other articles about this around the same time, and they were each pretty much crediting The Verge as their source, but others were saying reportedly, appears, seems. Here's the thing. Microsoft has made absolutely no announcement of this, that they would be killing off the Zune Marketplace. But also, when you look at even just the Verge's article on this, they say that they will be rebranding some of these technologies, including Zune would be rebranded into just simply music and video in the new Windows 8 operating system and tablets and Windows Phone maybe too. But that doesn't mean they're completely doing away with Zune or Zune Marketplace or anything that they've already built up. In fact, if they are truly rebranding, and keep in mind, this is just conjecture. This isn't actual fact or an actual announcement from Microsoft. But if this were true, it really wouldn't make sense that Microsoft would completely do away with the current podcast directory and start over. I would think they would carry that over and instead rebrand the content that they already have. So that means if you're in the Zune Marketplace now, then you'll be in whatever they rebrand it to later. I really don't think they'll completely wipe it out and start over fresh, if this conjecture and theory is even true. But that's where Rob Greenlee comes in. Rob Greenlee is a very successful podcaster, podcast producer, and he's the business manager for the Zune Podcast Marketplace. Rob and I are also both members of the Tech Podcast Network over at techpodcasts.com. And we spent some time on Skype talking about the future of Zune and the marketplace, how to get in the marketplace, and some of the perspective of podcasting as a future, and a couple podcasting tips, what Rob uses for podcasting, what formats are best. I will turn this over to our pre-recorded interview with Rob Greenlee from Zune. Thank you very much for joining me.
It's great to be here, Daniel.
The Zune player is not a device anymore. I mean, it's been a popular device. It was the number 2 device for a little while, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I think it depends on what numbers you were looking at. But yeah, I mean, the Zune platform is not all about the Zune player anymore. It's not really a hardware platform quite as much anymore, though there is still millions of Zune portable media players out there being used today. So we sold a lot of Zunes. Yeah, I would say that the perception is that we didn't sell that many Zunes, but the truth of the matter is there's millions of Zunes still out there people are using every day. So, it's still a large kind of platform for podcasters to get their audio listened to. But I would say that looking forward, the Windows Phone is really where the growth is and where the opportunity is, right on the phone. So, I'd say that that's kind of the big way of looking at it is that the Zune devices are large out there still today, but that's kind of fading. Where the future is the Windows Phone platform.
So then I really like how Microsoft has taken that and has evolved with the technology and turned the Zune from just being that hardware to the platform and the marketplace. And what other ways, and I know we're on the edge of release and news about Windows 8, so there might be stuff you can't share, but what other ways is Zune integrating into the world of technology, especially as it relates to podcasters?
And it's certainly part of the overall platform of today for Windows 7. There are changes coming in Windows 8. A lot of that stuff I can't really talk about right now, but I would say that from a podcaster's perspective, I think that the thing to really focus on is the Windows Phone platform. And so as that kind of grows, that's really where the focus of the growth is going to be in the future. So I think there's not a lot that I can talk about quite yet, but I think that the opportunity is still is there for podcasters on the platform. And currently today, it's also the video podcasts are currently also available in the Windows Media Center software as well, which will be a part of the Windows 8 platform and it is currently in Windows 7. So if you're doing a video podcast, that will still be there. And then also Zune.net is also our website, and we have our full podcast catalog available on the web streaming via Silverlight. So it is there, and then the Zune software is out there. and that's got the full catalog, in it today. That actually runs on Windows 7, and it actually will run on Windows 8 as well. So it actually will run in the desktop mode in the Windows 8 consumer preview. So if you actually get that Windows 8 consumer preview, you can still load the Zune software on that.
So on the Windows side of things, and I've switched to OS 10 a couple years ago as my primary computer, and I know a lot of people out there. My audience is about half and half with a little bit of Linux sprinkled in. But on the Windows side of things, what is that place where people can go that's like Windows, Microsoft friendly to get their podcasts? And is Zune already so integrated into Windows 7 like iTunes is for OS 10, where iTunes is the place to get podcasts?
Yeah.
And it's really, on OS 10, it's the place. It's integrated already. It's already installed on the operating system. But on the Windows side of things, yes, people can get iTunes, but a lot of people don't like iTunes. So is Zune Podcast Directory already built into software that's with Windows 7?
No, it's the Zune software. It's actually the compatible version of the iTunes software for Windows 7. It's been around for about, since 2006. That has like the music and video and podcast marketplace. And it's also used to synchronize content with Windows Phone too. So it's very, very much similar to the iTunes kind of platform, right? So the Zune software, and it's the Zune Marketplace media player software. It's actually kind of a premium Windows media player is kind of how I like to look at it.
Oh, okay.
And it's totally free. It's available off of Zune.net. So you can go get that, and it's actually a very Metro style type of app. It was actually very, very similar to kind of the overall direction that the operating system is going and how it looks and how it feels. And it's totally free, and it's been around for a long time. And it really was the software, besides maybe Windows Media Center, that really plowed this whole Metro design. So it's a very beautiful software. It's very easy to use. The content really pops off of the page, and I would say that it's a better experience than other similar type of software out there, including iTunes. It's better from the standpoint of kind of the user experience. So if you haven't tried it and you're running a Windows machine, definitely go get the Zune software and check it out. It's got the full podcast marketplace in there. You can subscribe to podcasts. You can watch them right in the software itself. So
yeah, and that's especially great because so many people complain about iTunes runs so slow on Windows. And many times people don't even think that, well, there's Microsoft's program. I wish that Zune was built into Windows, like Zune replaced Windows Media Player. Any idea of that coming in Windows 8, or can you say?
Well, as you think about Windows 8, it's very, very much an app-centric environment. So there isn't a lot that's kind of built into it from a media and player perspective. All that functionality is going to be added to as like an app type of experience. And I'm not saying that there's a podcast app or something like that for Windows 8 right now. That does not exist. But I would say that there is a kind of the philosophy that the company has taken with the Windows 8 platform is that it's very it's in pieces, right? So you can build your own personal experience there based on kind of this app model.
There's the Zune Podcast Directory, and I always encourage people get on the Zune Podcast Directory. And what's the process for doing that?
Well, I would say that there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. Probably the best way is just to send me an email and with your feed, and I'll personally add it, since probably most of the people that are listening to this podcast are probably podcasters, or they have an interest in doing a podcast. I offer this, and I've been doing this for years. I just put my email address out there. It's rob@zune.net. Send me your feed address, and I'd be happy to personally add it, and I will reply to your email and let you know when it's in. And we're good to go, because I want to get content in the platform that is coming from podcasters that are proactive and are growing and learning about how to podcast better and things like that. That makes for better content on our platform as well. So that's why I put my email address out there. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. That's rob@zune.net, and I'd be happy to help you get your show on the platform. The other way is we do have a submission process that's off of Zune.net. That's our website. The full podcast catalog is available for streaming video and audio off of that site. And there is a little submission box that you can submit your podcast to us. And then also in the Zune software itself, there is an area to submit your podcast to us that's built into the software, and that comes into my submissions queue. But I would say for the folks that listen to this show, just send me an email, with your feed. And like you've said for a long time, in your shows, have your basics down, your album art, your cover art, your descriptions, your title, and primarily have an MP3 file as far as a media file, and then an H.264, it could be an MP4, or it can be like an M4V video file. So, and then if you have those things, you're pretty much good to go, and we'll get you in the catalog.
Are there any special things, though, that your feed, that you require podcasters to have from your feed? Because here's a special question with this, is RSS feeds get two different images in them for podcasts. One is from the RSS2 image tag, which that's the standard is 144 by 144 pixels. But looking at the Zune podcast directory, you're using larger images, and you're not just blowing up that smaller size. So are you pulling from the iTunes image tag?
Yes, actually, that's where we do most of the looking.
Sneaky.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, most podcasters, when they put out a podcast, they think of getting it in iTunes, right? So they're focused on making sure that the iTunes tags are properly populated. And so what we've done is we look at those tags, first, and then we look at the RSS2 tags. So we do kind of want to have both of the tags fully populated to actually, work with our platform. Now we do not actually look for like the cover art that's part of the media file itself. So we don't have any process to parse the album art that's embedded in the media file. But that comes across our platform. It comes from the iTunes tag and the RSS2 tag. So you need to have both tags, actually populated with a cover art that's active. So that's really important. Because if you don't have both tags covered, then in different parts of the platform, your album art will not show up. So it's really, really important that you have both of those areas populated. And I think that's just a fundamental that every podcaster should do, is to have both of those tags populated with series descriptions as well as the proper size of cover art. Now we cover any size cover art, so it's really important that you put in a very high quality cover art that's either 300 by 300 or 600 by 600, and I'm actually okay with putting in a larger size in the RSS2 tag. I don't think that our platform will kick your podcast back or not allow it to come in if it doesn't conform to the 144 by 144. So, our platform is fairly flexible on that. I don't believe that even the iTunes platform will kick out your podcast if you put in a larger, cover art than the 144 by 144. It may not validate or it may not be part of the spec, but it's okay with me, and it's not a big deal if you want to put the same size in both the iTunes and the RSS2.
So then with iTunes, when people want to change something about their podcast, they just change it in their RSS feed. Is it just that same way with the Zune podcast directory?
Yeah, we did not, back in 2007, architect the catalog to automatically update the cover art. So that has to be manually updated by me, in our team here. So really the ideal situation is I hate to say this, but to let me know that that's changed. It's kind of a hassle, I know. But that's the reality of it. If you happen to notice that, that you've changed your cover art, and it's for a show that's in the Zune platform. I mean, if you could send me an email. I mean, a lot of times I notice the change, but oftentimes I don't. And so it'd be great if you could send me an email just to let me know that needs to be updated. So that's unfortunately, now that's not so much the case in every part of the platform. Some parts of the platform, your cover art will automatically change, and other parts it has to be manually changed. So I know that's kind of a confusing thing, but that's unfortunately how it was architected, and I have to work with that. So the art that shows up in the Windows Phone while you're listening to a podcast will be changed right away when you update your feed. But the album art that appears in the Zune Marketplace software as part of the catalog will not update. So that's something that I have to go into my tools here and manually swap out.
Okay, so if someone is making changes to their feed, either they change the title, the album art, the artist, the description, any of that, and they go to the marketplace and they notice it's not changed, they can just email you, rob@zune.net.
Correct. Yes.
Awesome. I'm sure a lot of people out there really appreciate that you're so open like that, and you don't get that from iTunes. You can't ask for help from iTunes, but we really appreciate that you're open to that and personally respond to these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm from the podcast community. I mean, I had my own podcast for many, many years, and was part of the original group that actually started podcasting. So I'm very much a part of the community, and I've always been a part of the community, and I've always wanted to be accessible. And as part of my job here is to maintain relationships with podcasters all across the country. So I want to be accessible, and I am accessible. So it's just a matter of shooting me an email, and I'm more than happy to help.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any secret tricks with having a podcast in the Zune Marketplace? And what I mean by that is with iTunes, people can take their iTunes podcast URL and just change the HTTP to ITMS, and that opens their podcast link directly in iTunes. And that also works on mobile devices. So if someone is browsing with a mobile phone, they click that iTunes link, it opens in iTunes. Is there some kind of secret trick that can work like that for the Zune side?
Well, we don't have it a little secret trick that actually works on the phone to actually do that. We do have what we call a deep link. That for every podcaster, there is a way that you can get a deep link into the Zune software. Actually in two places, the Zune software and the catalog that's available off of Zune.net. So if you go to Zune.net and then scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see a link that's offered off of each page of the Zune.net website that says I think it's Zune links. And then if you go into that area of the website, you can do a little search query for the title of your podcast, and that will bring up a page that will make available links, direct links that you can put on your website.
Nice. Yeah, I just did that. It's called Link to Zune in the footer. Yep. And I like that because in iTunes, it's not obvious how to get a link to your podcast, but here you just search for it. And when I click on it, then it shows me a couple different links. It says my Zune Marketplace link for the Audacity to podcast and my Zune Social link. What is the Zune Social link?
That's your page that's available off of the Zune.net website.
Okay.
So a visitor can go into that page for your website and actually listen to an episode or watch an episode right on that page. That's the way to get access to see what your podcast looks like on the Zune platform if you're running a Mac.
Let's look into the future a little bit of podcasting. You've been very integrated with the behind the scenes of podcasting, and working with Microsoft, you get to see that future and see where the technology is going in many different ways. What can you tell us about where you think podcasting will be, audio and video? What's the next step? Where do you think we'll be in a few years?
Well, I can speak to what I think is happening in the marketplace and the evolution of audio and video podcasting. And I think and these are not specific to what Microsoft may have planned or anything like that, but they really get back to the foundations of audio and video. And I think that here over the next few years, and these are trends that I've been seeing kind of happening for a few years now. I've been involved in the podcast space. Actually, I launched a podcast back in 2004, and I actually started my show on broadcast radio. So I was actually doing a nationally syndicated show on the broadcast side for many years, and then took my show into the podcasting realm. And so I see this kind of this movement that's happening around audio specifically, and I can start out with that, of moving more into places where people spend a lot of time consuming audio. And I think that this has been a fundamental that's really supported the growth of podcasting all along. But I think it's becoming more and more important as people get so much media in their lives. And I think that the audio side, it's going to be more and more important that podcasts get enabled in cars and be able to be more easily and safely consumed in cars. And I think, a lot of folks have been doing this for a long time. If they have an aux-in jack or something like that to their stereo system, they can plug their MP3 player or their phone into their car and play it through their speaker systems, or a Bluetooth connection, that kind of thing. And that's something I do every day as well. And I think that over time, I think that that content, along with online radio, is going to be much more a part of your kind of car stereo experience, right? I mean, all the trends that I'm seeing is that cars are going to be more computerized, going to have 3G connections or 4G connections, and going to have the ability to get online radio into the car, just like what we've been used to getting FM radio or the traffic reports on AM radio. So I think that the internet radio piece is going to become much more important, and I think it's critical that those experiences be safe and easy to navigate to get to the content that people want to consume. And you think about this TV anywhere or this media anywhere kind of model that clearly fits into that, right? So you can start listening to a show on your home stereo or on your computer at home, and then stop playing it and then resume it in the car or something. Those type of experiences I think are really, really important to the future of podcasting. And then on the video side, I would say that the more and more the video podcast side of the realm is moving more and more towards the large screen playback experiences. And not all video podcasts will find success on the television. There's still plenty of video podcasts that are geared more towards mobile and like maybe Slate type platforms. But I think that where the big growth is in online video content is going to be moving more towards the television. I think you can see all the trends moving that direction. But I think that's where you're going to see this happen more and more. Is that and this is what I'm seeing in the marketplace today too. More and more video podcasters are thinking more and more about how they can get their shows on large screen playback experiences, especially as we talk about kind of how the video game is being upped with the new iPad that's come out, with the higher resolution screen. You think about the Xbox world, and you think about these Roku, these smart TVs and things like that. That this content that we're all used to, that we've been consuming on our laptops and our home computers, is going to move to the big screen. And I think that's where the opportunity is for video podcasters here in the future. So that's kind of a summary.
Yeah, and on that aspect of the audio in cars, recently GM announced that some of their cars would start partnering with Stitcher Radio so that people could get Stitcher Radio in their cars without having to use a smartphone.
Yeah, and I think that's clearly an example of what I'm talking about. Is that's the movement that's happening that clearly makes sense. I mean, it just makes sense that we all want to consume audio. I mean, our cars. I mean, that's what I do every day on my way to work. I mean, I've got like a half-hour commute each way, and I listen to audio podcasts in my car.
Do you think video and audio are still going to end up being separate fields, or do you think audio podcasters need to start looking at moving into video? Or like there's always been that debate of should there be more focus on video, or should we maintain a focus on audio? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that decision needs to be made based on what the type of content that you're doing, and I think, and also what the technical abilities are of the podcaster and how much time you have to spend with the show. I think that there are some advantages to making your podcast a video podcast. But I also think it for a lot of shows, I don't believe that the video is really necessary. I mean, I think if you look at what people are spending more time with, I would say that people in certain genres of podcasts are still spending more time and have a larger audience around the audio side. So if you're doing video of basically primarily an audio podcast, that goal would be just deeper kind of engagement of your audience and feedback, right? That can contribute to the live production of your show. But if you want to pre-produce your show and do kind of piece it together like a jigsaw puzzle of sorts, and that's kind of what I did for a long time too, where you don't have time to, or you don't feel confident that you can do a good live show. Live is a very risky thing. I mean, I started out doing a live radio show on broadcast for a couple of years, and that was always a very difficult thing, and it was very difficult to not make mistakes. I mean, yeah, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of respect for the live radio broadcasters and their ability to juggle all the things that they have to think about. But those guys usually have a guy back in the that's kind of producing the show for them, back in that's running the board, as they say. But typically a podcaster has to run everything themselves, right? And I think it can be a very distracting thing to do a video podcast when. And it can maybe detract from the content production side of it. But if you really are passionate about that and you have an audience that wants to engage with your show, I think it's a way that can add to your show and make it more of a compelling experience for people to watch on demand. But clearly the on-demand piece is always going to be where the big audience is.
Now, a technical question that many people might be wondering. I know at one point when people entered the realm of video, it suddenly meant that they have to release their podcast in half a dozen different formats, which of course took tons of bandwidth and cost people a lot. Is there a universal video format that you recommend? Does M4V, the same M4V that works on iOS devices, does that work with Zune as well?
Yeah. The M4V H.264 baseline profile is what I recommend. That actually plays on every playback platform at Microsoft. Every experience on the Microsoft platform today will support that, and that is also supported by the iTunes platform as well, and a lot of other playback platforms. So that's the one I would stick with if I were, a video podcaster today. And then the MP3. I mean, I come across a lot of podcasters that are doing the M4A stuff, and I think it's a mistake. I think you can still be successful with an M4A podcast, but I believe that your playback opportunities are much greater if you stick with the MP3 format.
Now let's geek out for a minute. And can you tell me what your podcasting gear is?
I have a complete podcast studio in my office here, and I use a Mackie mixer, and I use Shure mics. So my Mackie mixer is it's an 802-VLZ3. It's basically a eight channel in mixer, and I really am a big fan of Mackie on the mixer side. And then you really can't go wrong with any Shure mic.
Yeah, they've got a great line. Which one in particular are you using?
It's the SM7B. Yeah, it's a professional studio mic. You'll see it in a lot of kind of broadcast radio stations. But I think it's like $350 a piece or something like that.
And then what program do you use for editing your audio?
I use SoundForge, and I use the Levelator software as well for kind of leveling the software.
Are you recording straight into your computer or a digital recorder?
I go through a USB kind of unit. So I've got an analog mixer that plugs into like a USB a unit. It's actually a pretty expensive USB unit. It spells like $500 or whatever that actually takes the audio from the mixer and runs it into my computer. It's kind of an expensive setup, but it's very portable and really high quality. I'm really happy with it.
Let's dispel a myth here. Have you ever had a crash doing it that way, recording into your computer?
Where I've lost the recording? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, lost or corrupted the recording.
You know what? With my current system here, I've never had that happen. I mean, I used to have my own studio at home that was running off of it was like a $12,000 studio that I had with a phone hybrid and a Mark of the Unicorn kind of. I mean, it was like what a typical broadcast radio station would have. And it was very problematic. And I occasionally would start recording an episode and the system would freeze up. I mean, I was running off of Windows 98 back then. And the whole system would just freeze up and I'd be like 20 minutes into my show and basically lost all my audio. But I would say that that's probably rare these days, since Windows 7 is out and it's very reliable now. Really, a fail-safe is to go directly into a digital recorder of some sort that's pretty high quality. That would be kind of my premier recommendation.
Looking at your podcasting workflow, from everything you do to record a podcast, making your notes, editing your show afterward, the hardware you have, every little tool that you have along that process, what is the one tool that is your absolute favorite tool along the way, whether it's just a tiny software program that makes something easier for you or it's some piece of hardware that makes it possible for you? What's your favorite tool that you use?
I would say that my favorite tool is the Levelator software. I would say that's it's free. It was built by a guy who's an expert in audio engineering. And I totally understand why he created that tool. And it's because a lot of shows that are kind of like pieced together, so you have different segments that maybe were recorded at different times, or you have an intro, and then you have some music, and then you have a segment with an interview, and then you transition into another segment. The volume levels can vary between all those things, right? And you need to have some way to be able to kind of make it consistent. Because it's very difficult in a digital recording environment to record everything exactly the same and exactly the same level. And I also am a firm believer that if you're doing a podcast, you need to make sure that your volume levels are higher than you would probably think they need to be. I mean, I think a lot of people listen to podcasts in noisy environments. And I've seen this in portable media players a lot where a podcast would be recorded a little too low in volume, and then the listener would have to crank up the volume on their portable media player to the maximum so they can actually hear your show because they're riding on a bus or something like that, and there's a lot of background noise. So I'm a big firm believer in ramping up the volume level of the audio. and the Levelator does a great job of doing that.
Yeah, fantastic program over there from conversationsnetwork.org. And I'll certainly have links to these different tools and some of the things that you've mentioned in our show notes for this episode at theaudacitytopodcast.com/74. Rob, where can people find you on the internet? Your podcasts, follow you around? Where do you want people to go?
Well, right now, the only podcast that I regularly am on right now is the Morning Tech Show with Todd Cochran. And that's on usually Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. And so, I'm not always on that show, but I'm there I've been there on a pretty regular basis for years now. And then I also produce a podcast for Zune called The Weekly Download. I'm not actually on that podcast, but I actually do all the production and do all of the post production and the scripting and all that kind of stuff. And I do believe in kind of having a script for a show, not necessarily verbatim script, but I'm, going back to my radio days, I had to produce shows that were very focused, like 6 minutes and 36 seconds. So I had to be very tight. So I'm a big believer in being rather planned ahead for what you're going to talk about and those kind of things. But also I can be found on Twitter. I've got a Twitter account, Rob Greenlee, so at Rob Greenlee, and that's GREENLEE. And I do have a couple of websites. I have robgreenlee.com. I actually post blog posts in there about tips around podcasting and things like that. And then I still have my old radio show site up there that has all my archives from my 7 years of doing a nationally syndicated radio show. And that's at webtalkradio.com. So, and then I'm at rob@zune.net. So you can reach out to me if you're a podcaster. Happy to hear from you.
Anything else that you'd like to share with the audience of people who are dying to podcast or podcasting? Any tips or anything else you'd like to give them?
I just want to let everybody know that I think that podcasting has a bright future, and I think it's really interesting what's going on around podcasting right now with comedy podcasters, and it's something that if you're a podcast fan, you should definitely keep an eye on, because I think it may be the aspect of podcasting that will get it back in the minds of people more than it has here over the last couple of years. I think it's kind of been a little bit replaced in the minds of a lot of people because of social media, that kind of stuff. But I think that if certain genres of content starts pumping into the podcast area that's very popular, that the whole podcast phenomenon could get a kind of a resurgence, right, of popularity and most of all awareness. So I think that's one of the big challenges that podcasting has today, and I think it does have a bright future. In some ways, it needs to evolve.
I think it will, as people then are also growing and finding new ways that it's no longer just about iTunes and RSS, but it's about phones, it's about cars, it's about tablets and video and TVs and all of this. Yeah, you're so right. Podcasting has a bright future. And I
definitely agree with what you're saying. I think that it's podcasting is not just about listening to it on one particular device, like an iPod. It's actually so much more fragmented and so much more broad in apps and TVs, and I mean it's just going to be in so many places. I mean, and there's going to be a lot of places where it's not even going to be called podcasts.
Well, Rob Greenlee from Zune, thank you very much for joining us for the Audacity to Podcast. And I'll share all of the links and anything else that you mentioned in our show notes over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/74. And Rob, thank you very much for sharing this information, for reaching out to me and saying that you wanted to speak here, and also for letting us know that Zune is certainly not dead.
No, it's not. Definitely. Thank you, Daniel.
So huge thanks to Rob Greenlee for joining me for this episode of the Audacity Podcast. You can get the links for everything that he mentioned over at theaudacitypodcast.com/74. And that way you can check out what he's doing and get in contact with him. I will be speaking at Blog World, New York City on their Podcasting 101 panel. That's a huge, huge honor for me, and I'm super excited to be going to that. That is June 4th through the 6th. You can register for that over at theaudacitypodcast.com/blogworld and get in on their early bird discount. And if you register with that link, then it's an affiliate link for me, so I'll get a little benefit from that. And I'd appreciate that. But I look forward to seeing you at Blog World New York City, if you can make it there. Please follow me on twitter.com/theramennoodle. Send your feedback to feedback@theaudacitypodcast.com or call 903-231-2221, or you can send a voice message from theaudacitypodcast.com website. Now that I've given you some of the guts and taught you some of the tools, it's time for you to podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. I'm Daniel J. Lewis. Thank you so much for listening. The Audacity to Podcast is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our podcasts over at noodle.mx. And the Audacity to Podcast is also a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. People like Rob Greenlee and so many others, Todd Cochran and more, are members of the Tech Podcast Network and lots of shows on tech. If it's tech, it's here. Find more at techpodcasts.com.